What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on the Albin counter gambit. This is part 7 of the complete course. And today we're going to be looking at the moves d4, d5. After c4, we break out with the Albin counter. And a move we haven't looked at that does happen. We've already looked at so many moves, including this little e3, the main move of taking, knight coming out here. We get all kinds of possibilities. What about if this pawn takes? Kind of funny looking, but C takes E5, or excuse me, C takes D5. So if C takes D5, first move is obvious. It is queen takes back. Queen takes D5. And from this position, we're going to look at 4 moves. Knight C3, trying to attack the queen. Knight F3, trying to defend the pawn. We'll also look at the slower E3 and then the occasional D takes E5. So let's just jump right into it. If the knight comes out here trying to get some tempo, attacking the queen, that's a mistake. It's actually the most common move. 32% of games on Lichess database, regular games, knight C3 is the move. It's like, what? Well, move is obvious. I say that, but a lot of people have played bishop B4 with a pin. Let's not be fancy. Just take the pawn. Just take the pawn. Because a queen takes back, which is almost every time. I don't know why. This is just the instinct for white is just to take back. When we take back, black is just already clearly better. This bishop could possibly throw in a check. We're going to misplace the king. So this is fantastic. And most of the time, it's going to be knight to b5 here on the 6th move. They could try knight to d5, also trying to threaten this fork, but just simply bishop to d6 stops that. We don't have to play knight a6. So bishop d6 is good. And after like f3, simply just knight c6. And maybe they play e3 trying to undermine our pawn, but we got another move. Bishop e6 attacking this lone undefended knight right here. And after the knight departs, like f4, for instance, we're just going to take it. And now, no longer attacking this pawn. And we can just go ahead and castle, reinforce the baby. We're looking really good. If I have seen occasionally this push right here, trying to defend the knight. Well, right here, just play knight f6, and we're doing just fine. Takes, obviously take back, and we're still looking to castle queenside. It's going to be a very common idea to castle queenside, and this pawn's actually keeping the knight out, so it's not so bad. Actually, black with a clear advantage right there. So most of the time, though, I notice in this position, the knight likes to come to b5 on the 6th move. And what we're going to do here is, obviously, this is not as good. Knight can take. We're going to play knight a6 this time. If knight goes to b5, it's going to be knight a6. Yes, we hang this pawn, but after this check, the king either has to move, which is not good. King doesn't want to come to the d file, so they'll block, but king's coming to the d file anyway. We're going to take, and it's going to be king takes d2. And now we're going to bust out with the move c5. And where's the knight going to go? Knight could come back to b5 again. Went there once, might go there again, trying to keep this threat, even though it's not a threat because we have the knight there. But knight b5 is possible. Here, just develop another piece. Bishop e6, knight f6 is okay too, but bishop e6, and then if white decides to throw in this check, this one doesn't work. They may throw this one in. It's not really a big deal. So we're just going to go to e7. And again, this rook is coming over and we're looking okay. So if they want to get super greedy, they could take this pawn, but we're just going to attack rook to b8. And now we're going to throw it. We're going to take a pawn with check. After the knight moves, we have rook takes b2 check. King maybe is c1. But notice we have 2 attackers here. And black is doing great here, defending that. And it's a funny looking position, but black with a clear edge right here. Sometimes here, back after we played c5, and the knight goes, let's say, comes back forward. Like I said right here, simply bishop e6 is fine. And knight throws in this, instead of knight throwing in this check, let's say they play e3, which adds some defense to the knight, which we're not attacking anyway. But here, we're going to go ahead and castle. And it throws that check in. And now king e1. And now we're jumping in, like I said, knight b4. We have opportunity to do so. and it looks really clean. We're threatening the fork right here. So I've seen rook c1 stops the fork, attacks this pawn, simply b6 protecting the pawn. And if a3 to attack our knight, well, we can attack the rook. And remember, we're protected here. So after rook a1, if rook goes back to a1 to attack an instinctual move, we're doing it just fine here. Simply king b7 and can't take here. We're defending it, and knights are getting ready to come out. Rooks are getting into the game. Clearly black with the clear advantage right here. So back to the 10th move after the knight went to b5 right here. Let's say after this, after c5, knight goes to b3 instead. Yeah, it's attacking this pawn. We're protecting it, but I still play just simply b6, getting this knight chance to get out of there if needed. Sometimes e3 right here, getting ready to throw this check. If they take, this is we're just completely winning right here. So we don't have to really worry about that. So simply knight f6. Like I said, if they take it, completely winning right here. Rooks are coming into the game. Everything's coming into the game. This is just much, much better for black. But instead, they may just throw this check in. Bishop to b5 check. Here, we can't play this because they'll just take our knight. And this is just too slow backing up. Let's just hear king e7. And the rook's coming in. We're going to, maybe castle artificially, but rook d8 is probably coming in, also threatening knight e4. So a lot of times they'll play this move. If they play that, we're playing rook d8. And so we're getting into the game that way. We may be thinking about rerouting this knight down to e8 and jumping up here. Alternatively, they don't play f3. If they play the knight out here, well, that gives us the e4 square. And we're going to play exactly that. And the king has to be very careful here. For example, if the king goes straight back, we have the fork. That's not good. If king goes maybe to c2 right here, well, then we got knight b4. We're jumping into the position. And we're looking for either maybe rook to d8 or possibly knight takes here on f2. Couple of possibilities. So king may not want to go there. Turns out, even if king goes, say, to e1, do we have a check? Can we get into the game this way? Well, we don't have a check right away, but we're going to jump into b4 and threaten one. The only move where we're not going to come forward is probably going to be e2, because this is not really threatening a fork, so it can kick us. And if we go up here, it's not that great. We need to have a check if we're going to move forward. We don't really have one here. This square is covered. So actually, we're going to move back to d6 and attack the bishop. So we're going to, forget about the king for briefly and go for this bishop. And bishop doesn't have a lot of squares. That's no good. What about here? That ain't working, is it? What about here? Oh, baby's trapped. Baby's trapped. So bishop's got to be careful. Can't take here. Might play this move, but this is interesting. Should we just play rook b8? Or is there something better? Knight b4 is interesting. Not so much for the fork. That is a threat. But we're all attacking the bishop. But the real threat is opening up this a6 square for the bishop. And yes, we sacrifice the exchange. But we're going to get this bishop back after king moves. And this is just too much here. We're leaping. All our pieces are coming in. And we're just surrounding white right here. And this is a great attack for black right here. You can see you get some big early attacks in some of these lines. Back here, queen takes. We looked at knight c3, queen takes, and then we take on d4. Another possible move besides these two is knight to e4. But here, we're going to play knight c6. Thinking about knight to b4 if it's possible. Also f5, like if they just bring out the other knight. Maybe f5 right here. Knight comes to down to g5. We're completely winning right here. And just gaining lots of, you can see we're just having our way here with white, with the huge advancements of the pawns here on the king side. Can't be comfortable for white at all. Massive advantage. So kind of a strange option to go here, but maybe, it's centralized, so they may try it. But you can see e4, really bad move after knight c6. Black is looking fantastic here. Some other options where you could go after f4 right here. Could try g3. But, you know, we can just attack over here, throw in the check. Bishop blocks. I think we can just take, and if knight takes this way, knight f6, and black is just developing much quicker and just crushing it right here. If they back up to knight to d2, again, just knight f6, bishop coming out, maybe e6, castling, and just attacking white. Black has the edge here. Black has a clear advantage, and white is not playing well. It's just not a very good idea. After we take here and they bring this knight out, we're feeling really good after this. We're going to have lots of chances to take a big advantage. Okay, so back to the opening moves, and we'll take a look at another response from white after taking here on d5. We take back with the queen. Instead of knight c3, trying to kind of rush to attack the queen and giving us a chance to take the pawn with the queen, let's say knight f3, a seemingly more logical option that protects this pawn before even thinking about this move. And what we're going to do is take with the pawn. So it's going to be e takes d4 right here. And we'll have to take a look at a move here that's not the most common, but it's a nice little move here. And that is knight to c3. If white finds this move, it's interesting because you can't take, or the queen hangs. So white might try to take advantage of this if they see it. And what do we do in this case about knight c3? Well, first of all, bishop b4. We're going to go ahead and pin the knight so that the knight's not going to be able to grab our queen. And that's the first step. So bishop to b4. The most common move here is queen takes on d4. And what we're going to do is go ahead and take back. Knight's going to take back. And now what move? Simply knight f6. And just a very simple development right here. And after a bishop to d2 right here, we're just going to castle king side. And so 8 moves in, and the position is more or less equalized right here. And we're actually doing pretty well. We're just going to play our game from here. And that's not so bad at all. Let's say after knight c3, we go ahead and pin the bishop right here with bishop b4. And I've seen also, instead of queen takes, knight takes d4. Here we're going to bust out with knight c6. And commonly, they'll just take. Our queen is being attacked, completely unprotected. What do we do here? Well, we can first take here, because this is a check, buys us a little time. And after the pawn takes back here, we are actually not going to trade queens. Let's just keep our pawn structure okay and get rid of this knight like this. Because we take with queens, yes, we'll get the king out, but then we're going to have to take with the b pawn. Better just to take the knight like this. From here, we'll just show you a few more moves, how things can go. Maybe bishop b2, bishop out to e6, common development move right here. Bishop e6, maybe e3, getting this bishop out. Here, well, we can't castle because queen is preventing that. So rook d8. Just flash out rook d8. Boom. And now the queen has to move. Say queen goes to f3. Trying to be a little bit aggressive right here. And maybe from here, we can actually shift over queen b6, attacking this bishop. And looking pretty good right here. Maybe rook b1. Trying to stare down at the queen, even though this rook is unprotected. There's no checking here. We maybe play knight f6. You know, keeping the queen out of future future e4 move. We're going to be castling soon. Over here, bringing our rooks into the middle of the board, which is common. And that's a decent position right here. You can see black with a very significant advantage. Let's go back to recap the opening moves here. We have the Albin counter. We're looking at takes, queen takes. And here we're looking at knight f3 on the 4th move. What is the automatic response? Take with the pawn. Pawn take d4. And now let's look at another common move besides this knight c3. We're not going to see it that often, but it'll happen. Queen, this is the most common move. Just queen takes d4. See it all the time. What do we do here? Actually, we're going to go knight f6. Knight f6 instead of the most common taking. This is better. We're going to let them take, and we'll bring our knight into the middle of the board. So we'll see how queen responds, or how white responds right here. If they do take, like I said, knight's going to take right here. This is most common. And we've equalized, and we're doing pretty well. Common move here is e4, trying to attack, but you can see it's not actually the best move. We're going to go knight b4, threaten the fork, and we're doing pretty well. Better move here, instead of the queen taking, is knight c3. So we chose not to take and trade queens. They choose not to take and trade queens and bring out their knight to c3. And in this position, which will be reached, this position will happen. This is only 6 moves in. Special move. Every once in a while, I have a special move. Queen a5. Only played 6% of the time, but can create some nice opportunities. So queen a5. Let's say bishop d2, which is almost automatic. This is pretty much the only move I'm going to look at from this position. It's almost automatic because you want to play this move anyway as white and develop your bishop, and it also is pointing towards the queen. So it's pretty common to see this move after queen a5. And here we're going to ignore it for now and play just knight to c6. And yeah, he's got some discovered attacks on our queen. We're not really worried about that right now. Obviously, right here is not a good move. And right here is not so great either. So if they try to come closer with a discovery, we're just going to take. Not to mention, we're simply attacking the queen. So if knight goes back somewhere, we can always take the queen. And if, after bishop takes the queen, we'll be in a position to fork the rook. So just throwing that out there, that right here, a discovered attack is not something we're overly concerned about. Just, keeping an eye on it, of course. But after knight c6, white will probably play queen e3 check. More than 50% of the time, that's the move. Queen e3 check. We're going to block bishop e6. And now this is the point when white is going to usually unleash the discovered attack with knight e4. Now the queen is not being attacked, so the queen is moved, and they think that this is a good time for this right here. Because if we take the knight, they're going to take our queen. And obviously we're not attacking anything with the queen exactly that we can take. So what to do here? Queen stays right here. What? How is that possible? Bishop to b4. Bishop b4 right here is creating massive threats, and a3 is not a problem. We are attacking this rook. I love this to see when they play this. I hate to see this move usually. It's an annoying move when we have to move our pieces back. But in this particular case, we don't have to. Because if they take, we're taking the rook, giving us time. It's just kind of scary. But right now, we're fine. Oftentimes before even playing a3, I would say we play bishop b4. Sometimes they'll take here first, take the knight. We're just going to take back, and then a3. And in this case, we're just going to castle. If they played a3, like I said, before the capture of the knight, they just play a3 right away. We'll initiate the capture here. We'll take, and then after queen takes, we can take here. Knight takes backwards. Then we castle, and we're putting all kind of pressure right here. But it feels like more often, after this move, knight will take first, then we take, then a3. And here, we just castle queenside. We're just going to castle. Can't take. We're good here. And if bishop takes like this, guess what? We're completely winning after knight takes because he can't take. Lots of possibilities, lots of moves can be played, but generally speaking here, after this castle, we're doing fantastic. And white has to find some kind of move. Sometimes they'll move the rook, thinking, well, let's move the rook. That way this attack is back on. So maybe rook d1. But here we can start our capturing process, taking, and there's several ways they could try to take back. Queen is not a good idea because we'll take their queen. So maybe knight takes back. But now this king is sort of, we're threatening mate. This is not even winning the queen. This is just mate. So, and if he tries to give himself some breathing room, well, now it is winning the queen. So maybe he takes with the rook right here. This one's a little tougher because we have to decide what to do. We don't have taking, knight takes. Okay, how do we bring more pieces into the game? It actually is not that great to take right here. And we still have the advantage, but here, got to find a different move to try to get to the king, and that is queen over to f5. And now we're pointing up here and just trying to keep the attack alive. And if it trades, this is fine. Rook is coming over, and we're keeping the edge right here. And he has a hard time. He can't even move this pawn. So, I'm not saying you'll get in this position. Some of these are pretty deep, but just some ideas to keep in mind on how you can get a big attack with some poor play from white. And it starts with that early move. You see that really early, this move right here C takes on D5 already. It's like they can play that move, then who knows what they're going to play. Let's look at some other lines here. Knight comes out to F3, like I said. What do? We simply take right here. And let's say queen takes. I think we looked at this right here. Knight F6. Knight C3 happens, attacking the queen. And what do? Queen A5. Remember this line and this move, Queen A5. Bishop D2 is almost automatic. Trying to look at our queen. We play Knight C6. Right here, let's say queen goes to A4. Seen this before. Queen A4. What's the point? Protected by the knight. And honestly, right here, I don't really mind taking because knights on the rim are dim. Right here, we can just jump our knight right into B4. And if bishop takes, this is fantastic. Doing really well right here. So queen A4 is going to be somewhat rare right here. Like I said, queen E3 check is kind of the most common. Like I said, bishop E6. We talked about this earlier. If knight G5 in this position, knight G5 looking kind of crazy trying to attack. What to do here? We have bishop C5. Counterattacking the queen. This is not a check, so we don't have to worry about that. You know, anything like that, we can just take the queen. So we're counterattacking the queen right here. And this is really nice. And white can go wrong. I've seen here a move like knight D5. What's the point here? The point is thinking if I take the queen, they're going to take our queen. And also, you know, threatening knight C7. But this is a little bit of a blunder. Why? Well, let's start the process. If we take the queen, they're going to take our queen. So now we take their knight. Bishop takes on D5. And they got to decide what to do here. But now we're also attacking the knight here on A5. So if they take here, F takes E3, knight takes A5. Uh-oh. Looks like we got an extra piece here. They try to save their bishop, go back somewhere. We take the knight. They try to save their knight, go back somewhere. Well, we take their bishop. And we're up a piece. Anyway, we end up a piece with that line. So instead, let's just recap the opening moves here. Takes here, knight here. We're taking with the pawn. And we're looking at queen takes. We're going to play knight F5. And if knight here, we go to queen A5 right here. Bishop D2 right here. Simply knight C6 right here. We looked at queen E3 check. What do we do right here? Bishop E6. Now knight G5. Uh-oh. What do we play? Bishop C5. Counterattack the queen. Let's say queen goes queen F4 right here. This is not a worry. We're protecting that. But queen F4 has been seen before. What do? We simply castle. And if knight takes here, we just take back. And the knight's ready to jump into D4 right here, like this. Or possibly some other tactics could come up. Now, this position may be slightly different, but just things to keep in mind. If something like this, he has now broken the connection between the bishop and the queen. So now we can consider this move. Why? Well, it's going to bring the king out into the open. It'll give us a chance to bring this other rook into the game. And it just looks like a very powerful attack with the queen kind of out of play here. And with this bishop able to create some chances. So I'll show you how this works. First, after we take and king takes, rook goes to D8. And let's say king just backs up here. Now, what's a move in this position that can maybe attack a pawn and also create a major threat if white was to try to protect the pawn? It's kind of strange. Like, what? That's a move I wouldn't have looked at. But I found this through deep engine study. So I'll straight up tell you that. This is not from a book. I found this move with some study. And it's this crazy looking bishop A3. What is going on here? What in the world is that? Obviously, if he takes, we're taking and completely crushing white right here. If he tries to protect like this, we take anyway, because he can't take back, because the rook can't protect C3. If he tries this, well, then you're not protecting the knight anymore. So it's a really cool move right here. There's not a whole lot. They can't do anything to protect this pawn. There's almost nothing that white can do right here. they have to try to slide the queen over and save the position and trade queens. And here we just take here anyway, because we're attacking the rook. They'll want to trade. And, yep, we're going to have to trade. And now the rook tries to get out of harm's way, but it can't protect itself and the knight at the same time. If it protects itself, the knight falls. If it protects the knight, it falls. One more move to show you. After knight f3, we take right here. We're talking about queen takes and simply knight f6. What if, instead of queen takes, knight takes d4 right here? Knight takes d4 on the 5th move. Well, knight c6. If knight takes, then queen takes. Remember, if knight usually taken here on c6, we just take with the queen. If something like e3, trying to get this other bishop out, here we can take. Knight takes d4. If e takes d4, then bishop b4 check. Maybe knight c3. And simply bishop d7, getting ready to castle, getting this rook here. Is going to be key. Maybe is a3. Here we can just take it. There's the castle. And we're looking pretty good. Common move here, bishop e3. We get our knight out. Rooks are coming in. And this is all well and good. If he takes that, we take back. Yeah, we messed up our pawns a little bit, but we're already castled. And this bishop hasn't even gotten out yet. And we're looking pretty good. A common move here, c4, but this is a major mistake. We're coming in for the kill right here. Bishop might try to block right here, but then we got this move. And white's falling apart. But in general here, knight taking on d4 here on the 5th move is not that great. Knight c6, like I said. And let's say e3, knight takes. Let's say queen takes back right here. Queen takes d4. Well, here queen takes d4, e takes d4. We'll play bishop e6, maybe knight c3. Here we can just castle queen side and perhaps bishop to e3 right here, adding some protection to this pawn. And maybe just knight e7 right here. Just play some simple moves. If white castles queen side right here, we have knight f5. We're thinking about leaping up into knight f5. Or possibly knight d5, just depending on what's played right here. So knight f5, knight d5, both possibilities, both can be good. For instance, if instead of castling, he plays h3, maybe this is not as attractive. Well, we go knight d5 in that case. And we're thinking about getting a knight or maybe a bishop to b4 in the future, and looking really good. So just some tips here in the early opening, how to get an advantage after the very early knight f3. And we have to touch on a couple other moves, a couple other replies after pawn takes on d5 and queen recaptures. We've looked at the 2 knight moves. That's by far the most common. You might occasionally also see e3 and even more occasionally d takes e5. So we do have to just kind of briefly look at what to do in those cases. If e3, automatically we're just going to capture. Okay, just take right back. And if e takes back, what to do here in this case? That's the first thing we're going to look at. There's also the possibility of queen takes back. If the pawn takes back, well, we're just going to go ahead and play knight c6 right here, adding another attacker to this pawn. So knight f3 to defend. And from here, we're going to play bishop out to b4 check. Couple of options on blocking right here. Okay, play bishop d2 or knight c3. Let's start with knight c3 right here. Let's go ahead and rock and roll from the other side. Bishop g4. One bishop pins the queen, one bishop pins the king. Very nice right here. Most often, bishop e2, trying to get rid of at least one of the pins here. Right here, we can go ahead and grab this because bishop's going to grab back. We already know that in order to attack the queen. And now simply queen to c4. Tuck our queen right in here to c4, trying to create some possibilities. We're doing pretty well right here. Bishop might take on c6. We're going to go ahead and take back with the pawn in this case. B takes c6, because if we take back with the queen, it is going to attack here, but it gives black a chance to castle and kind of get comfortable. That's the last thing we want. So we're going to take back here with the pawn so we can keep this queen on f1, preventing white from castling right here. So we have a specific reason, yeah, and they can throw in a check, queen e2, and this does attack our queen, so we have no choice. We have to recapture here. But now, knight can't take back, notice, because of the pin. So king has to take back, so now the king can't castle. So we've done our job preventing the king from castling. After knight e7, maybe bishop e3, we'll just go ahead and castle queen side. Our idea is maybe rook coming over here. Maybe he'll play rook h over to e1. We'll play rook h to e8. And okay, black with a very slight edge right here, playing pretty well. And we've got the king misplaced. Our king's a little bit out in the open, but I think black, I think I'd rather be black right here. We're getting ready to maybe leap our knight into the game, knight f5. And some decent possibilities will arise from that line. But let's jump back here. And I said we'd also look at the bishop blocking on that 7th move here. Bishop d2, much better for black if we see this. We are still going to shoot bishop g4 here on the other side. And right here, if bishop takes b4, what are we going to do? First, we can take over here because it attacks the queen. So queen takes f3, queen takes f3, g takes f3, now knight takes b4, threatening the fork, knight a3, and we simply castle. And this is very good. How is he defending this pawn? And clearly our pawn structure is better, our king is safer, and this is black all day, completely winning. So recapping that line here, recall, after this, takes, queen takes, we're looking at the e3, we take right here, e takes d4, and we looked at e takes d4, knight c6. Right here we looked at knight f3, in which we attack with the check. If this knight comes out, knight to c3, this hangs the pawn because it never protected the pawn. So queen takes d4, queen takes, knight takes. Again, look at this constant threat here in the Albin is our knight getting up here to threaten the fork. So maybe bishop d3, stopping it like this. But right here, we actually can attack that bishop. Bishop f5. Interesting move right here. Saying, hey, you take, we take. And there's some threats right here. If the knight comes out, we'll be able to grab the knight with check and win the queen. I mean, win the bishop. So some possible tactics can arise. And if he takes, obviously, we're just taking back. We're doing pretty well right here. We're going to have a chance to castle here. Most common move here, knight f3. But we can simply castle. Black is much, much, much better. So after here, queen takes. We're looking at e3 takes. What if queen takes right here? 29% of the time, queen takes right here. It's like, what? Well, we're going to take back right away. And after this move, knight c6. And we're still thinking about knight b4. If they try to push, it just helps us get there. And now they're having to play knight a3 to stop this. But now we can just grab that pawn and we're doing great. So that's pretty rare, though. Most of white's not going to push here. They're going to play knight to f3. And we're just waiting for the right time to jump up here. Right here, this bishop still can throw in this check. We got to make sure our king is safe. So right here, simply bishop e6 in this position. And if bishop b5, preventing us from going anywhere anyway, here just simply knight e7. So we can possibly recapture with the knight. Castle, castle, possibly bishop e3. And again, we're looking maybe for a future knight b4 still, even though white has castled, black has got an edge right here. Knight b4 is possibly on the table right here. If takes, obviously we're taking back because we jump up with knight b4. If they try to attack us, we're going to jump over here, attack the rook, and the bishop will have a2 covered. So it's not a bad move even right now. This is, like I said, a huge blunder right here. We're jumping up into here. If bishop tries to back up to d3 to stop this move, obviously hangs the bishop, so it can't do that. So that's a really hard time preventing this. So knight a3 is played anyway. And we're doing pretty well after something like bishop d5, trying to take this knight perhaps and open up the king. So, or even leaping knight f5, coming in closer, attacking the bishop. So just play your game. And black has the big edge. So queen takes d4, kind of a not a very good move, but it is played. Queen takes d4, queen takes d4, e takes d4, knight c6. It is played. Like I said, knight d5 is terrible. We're going to b4, and we're going to get a huge advantage. It's another way that this could go. Knight b4, knight a3, knight takes d5. I just deepen this line a little bit. Bishop c4, very common right here. But now just bishop b4 check. And after bishop d2, we can just take. King comes out into the open. And okay, maybe bishop e6 because we want to get castled as soon as possible. doing fantastic. If bishop takes, we don't even have to take right back. We can castle first. And I mean, it's just deadly right here. White completely crushing it. After this capture and this capture, this move a little bit slow. After we take here, queen taking here is all bad. And knight c6, we're doing great. If bishop b5 right away, just to show you one more line, we're just going to go knight e7, prepared to capture. Bishop takes and knight takes. This is now a possibility. So knight f3 to defend it. But now we can jump what we've always wanted. Knight b4, knight a3, bishop e6. These are very similar moves. Castles, castles, and black is killing it. So we have to look at one more move, and we're going to, briefly, this is a rare one. After takes, queen takes. What if takes right here? Whoa, what's this all about? It's actually rare. This move is played somewhat rare, 19% of the time, so enough that we got to be prepared for it. And I think the move is obviously, we're going to go ahead and misplace the king and then play knight c6. And from here, a couple of moves have been tried. f4 is a weird looking move, but it has been played. It just gives us a nice little square right here on f5 for our bishop. And after knight c3, go ahead and castle. And after blocking bishop to d2, we can now play bishop b4. And we're doing really well here. Say, for instance, knight f3. We can play f3 ourselves, trying to get some development quick. And if he pushes right here, if he pushes e6, well, we could just take it if we want to, or just bring out our knight. I mean, this pawn's going to fall at some point. This pawn's way overextended. So that's not too good. And if he takes, we just take with our knight, and we get some quick development right there. Next move, maybe a3. Just bishop takes. Bishop can't take back, so the pawn has to take back. And now rook h over to e8. And you can see black getting some quick development, quick power, and a good strong attack. But f4, somewhat rare. Most of the time they're going to play simply knight f3 here on the 6th move. And now maybe just knight ge7, knight c3 possibly. Move to keep in mind here, bishop g4, throw in the pin. We are attacking this guy, or threatening to take here and then take here. So sometimes bishop f4, trying to add protection, but now knight over to g6, attacking the bishop. So the bishop backs up here to g3, but we're just going to go ahead and castle with check, and it's looking real good. If the knight tries to defend like knight here to d2, this is not so great. We're just going to play bishop c5, and we're getting massive development. We have multiple attackers on this pawn, and h4 could be coming into play here very soon as well. Rooks are coming into the game right here, and black has got a strong, strong advantage. There you have it. That's why you can see that's not a very, it's going to be pretty common this time. We're just going to take. I mean, that's really that simple. We're just going to take and try to get our advantage this way. Right here, like I said, knight c6, and then after knight f3, simply knight g e7. We're doing great. If e3 right here, again, bishop to g4, just throwing the pin. Sometimes the moves aren't going to always be the exact same. Just keep some of these principles in mind, and we're going to doing just fine. I mean, obviously, castle is coming in. The moves kind of play themselves. White's doing decent here, but black is still equalized right here. And we're just going to play our game. Just keep in mind some of the common ideas, getting our pieces out, getting our rooks in the middle of the board. It's all common sense stuff. I mean, you can just, it plays itself. We can see knight g6. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, part 7. We got 3 more videos on the Albin Counter Gambit. Hope you all have been enjoying it very, very much. Have a fantastic day, everyone. And let me know what you think of the video series so far. 3 more videos. We have to take a look at some different variations, such as the next video, which will be on this move, known as the Spassky variation. Spassky's going to get his own video. So I can't wait for that. You guys have a good one, and we'll see you next time.